Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Friday, July 31st, 2020, 9:30 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And we're talking about building adventures because it's Friday. And last week we looked at Cooperative Dungeon 1, which was published by Creative Mountain Games in 2003. I believe. So I thought we'd check out another one. There were 4 of them all told over a couple of years' time. They were built by a collective of people on enworld.org, a website that was particularly big during the 3.exe era. And I think on into 4th. I think it's still big in 5th, although I think there are other communities that tend to get just as big as enworld now. There was a time when enworld was not just the biggest D&D community on the internet. Good morning, Growl Knight. But was also one of the only big communities. There were a lot of smaller ones. Certainly a lot of smaller ones that were devoted to whatever was not the current system of Dungeons and Dragons, but enworld was definitely the biggest by orders of magnitude. I don't know that that's true anymore. Still very big. Still lots of great content. You could get lost in there, but the I think the publishing arm of it, and the for a while the constant subscription drives, which were funding it, maintaining that size and getting bigger, may have been, I don't know, driving it toward an end that wasn't necessarily worthwhile. Sort of just eating to get bigger, without the goals of getting better in certain ways. Bigger is not always better, and sometimes communities can begin to collapse in on their own weight. But there's a ton of good stuff over there. It's definitely worth taking a look at, for sure. And I was around over there a lot more early on. And in fact, when Eric Noah, who is the EN and EN, still maintained the place himself, he turned it over to Russ. Goes by Morris on the site. At one point, he was looking to rename it, and I cautioned him to just turn it into EN rather than leave it at Eric Noah's, so that people would realize there was a transition that was being maintained. Because back then, the idea was that it was going to stay the type of community it was, rather than become its own sort of company and get bigger like that. On the other hand, Morris, at the time that it was still Eric's baby, Morris and another fella, what was his name? Did he go by Spoony Bard over there? That's the problem with sites where people don't go by their own names. It's hard to remember their actual real names sometimes. They ran the Demon Wars. It was some sort of a Demon World, some sort of campaign world that was tied to the website as an extension of it, or at least was using the boards there to build it. And then I forget the exact connection there. But because Russ was so tied to it, I think that was part of how it got handed over to him. And of course, we started up the Ennies back in those days. After Russ first took it over, there was the idea that there was going to be an RPG award, and myself and 4 or 5 other people were all working toward putting that together originally. I had suggested the Ennies because it kind of sounds like Emmys, right? And it is a nod to Ian or Eric Noah, the origins of the website. So it seemed like a good fit, and I think it worked out pretty well. I mean, they have a good thing there. I stepped down after the first year of being on the nominations committee. I just always felt that the idea was the nominations committee was a handful of people that kind of whittled down the entries to a certain number, and then the people were the judges, the people that voted. So once everybody started taking on this mantle of being a judge and wanting to be there year after year, I always thought there should be a 2-term limit. So maybe you'd have 1 or 2 people. Good morning, Mike. How you doing, buddy? So maybe you'd have 1 or 2 people that would carry over to the next year. But at some point, you want some institutional memory. I don't. If you have 5 fresh people every year, that might be a little too much starting from scratch every year. But I never really liked the idea that it became this sort of cliquey, sort of private domain of some people. And I thought, this should be opened up more. We should have term limits. You should have people there once or twice. Although I'll tell you, Jeff Rager, he's the man. If anybody, I think he was the longest time continuous, maybe not continuous, maybe he had a split, maybe he missed 1 year, but I think he was a Ennies nomination committee member more often than anybody else. I remember going to the very first Gen Con Ian World gathering in Wisconsin. I was there with Eric Noah and Kevin Culp and myself too there. Yeah, there were a bunch of us there for sure. Yeah, what was it? Morning, Luxfire. Hot beef sandwiches? Was that the sign they stole and put up behind the stage for where we were going to do the announcements and whatnot? Do you remember that? Do you remember that Grail night? It was definitely a good time. A very good time. We had a lot of fun going there, doing that thing. What is the point to this? Well, let's see. It is this weekend that Gen Con, admittedly online this year because of different problems. Yeah, the first year the Ennies ceremony took place online. They did it in a chat room, or it was on a I forget that program that people used to use for like a chat room back then. But it was in that sort of environment, and Gary actually got online, Gary Gygax, and helped do the presenting of them. And they were just going to send these certificates out, and I thought, I was going to be going to Gen Con anyway, and they did the ceremony ahead of Gen Con. So I just printed a bunch out, and I ran down to, I don't know, I think it was Michael's Crafts or something. I picked up a bunch of frames, cheap frames. Just not cheap, just inexpensive. and popped them all in these frames. I think there were like 12 or 18 of them to give out, and I took them up to Gen Con with me in Milwaukee, and I went around into the dealer hall and handed them out. Many virtual games this weekend at Gen Con. We'll see what's open this afternoon. Absolutely. Yeah, there's probably even more and more on the Discord channel, even more and more people scrambling to submit last-minute games or rally people to go ahead and play a game. So I'm sure if you get into the Gen Con Discord channel, you probably have to have bought a badge, right, to sign up for official games, but maybe there'll be people rallying sort of side games that you can get into. I don't know. It's possible. But yeah, Gen Con taking place this weekend, and that means also they should be doing a Ennies show or announcement or whatever on Saturday, and we'll see. Hopefully, from what I saw, there were quite a few old school products. Hey there. Quite a few old school products up on the that were nominated across the various categories, which there are many, many, many now. Hey, I got my Big Train 2020 tour t-shirt in. They're still selling the merch even though the tour is canceled. I don't know if they got one or two shows off at the beginning of the year over in Europe before things started getting shut down. But sadly, the original incarnation of Big Train, if you're not familiar, a prog rock band, I think started in 1990, and then it went through various transitions. I'm not sure there's even an original member left, but things transitioned over time, and so essentially this would have been the 30th year of the group's existence and touring and all that, and sad to say, Big Train, no Steam. My virtual games this weekend, we'll see what's open this afternoon. Oh, okay, you said that. I'm reading it twice. Badges are free. You pay by game, I think. Okay. That seems like a pain in the butt. How do you jump into, I guess you get some kind of a generic badge. Didn't they used to have those generic tickets? And you could jump into a game the spur of the moment, but if you get a bunch of generic tickets and then don't use them, you've just bought something that you can't. I don't know. It's awkward. I guess if people are paying for the tickets, they're more likely to show up at the event. When you get the larger conventions, sometimes no-shows can be a problem. You don't see that a lot without very good reason at smaller conventions like Gamehole Con or Gary Con or Nexus or Gaming Hoopla or any of those kinds of places, because they're not big and it's not hard to get around from place to place. Every now and then, especially with Gary Con, because it tends to be an older crowd, there'll be a little bit of a I'm not feeling well situation. People can sometimes a sore limb or a flare up in the back or migraine or whatever can really take it out of someone with a couple of years on them. So I've seen that happen where someone's begged off an event, but usually they'll swing by and say, hey, I'm just not up to it. Give away my ticket, whatever, if somebody here, and if there's somebody standing right nearby, they'll jump into a seat. So in those smaller conventions where it's more casual, you don't see a lot of empty seat games that were ostensibly filled up. But I used to see that. At Gen Con. where you'd have no shows, even though they paid for the ticket. And I think that was the impetus for paying for individual tickets. Maybe in the long run, that's also a way of gauging what kind of events they should focus on. And I know that they've moved further and further away from traditional wargaming. I think they still have big Games Workshop events. I think you'll see like more recent rules, Osprey stuff. You'll see bolt action. You'll see that sort of most of the miniature stuff nowadays. Privateer press stuff, of course, always good. Frostgrave, that's pretty cool. I love games. I love the war games rules where they're fantasy based, medieval fantasy in particular, and the figures that you use in the skirmish games are all individually based, so that you can get double duty out of them in your D&D games. Some of the 4-day, 24-hour events, 6 per day, are $80. Is that what that is? Did anyone here ever try True Dungeon? No, I never did. I know a bunch of people that have and enjoy the heck out of it. It's kind of almost like D&D meets escape rooms, right? They're more puzzles than they are LARPing. I think there's sort of a, I don't know, mesh of those two sort of things. I know Studio 66 Cosmo Joe was setting up and tried last year a sort of prototype of a full-scale dungeon thing at GaryCon, and he was set to go. They even extended the space of GaryCon into another building that was large enough to have a full-size dungeon experience. And you go, and extra points if you're in costume, particularly if it's a costume that, denotes the type of character you're playing. And that looked like a lot of fun. I got a little tour through it at GaryCon the year before this last one that didn't happen. So he did a lot of work to get this thing going, and then this coronavirus thing just kicked his ass because there's no virtual equivalent for this thing. He's got this thing set up for an actual physical event, and there's no way to transfer it from the physical world into, because that's the point of it, right? So that really sucked for him. He's had a successful Kickstarter for his custom game tables, which is good. That's a way you can always, because he's a great artist and a good friend, a really nice guy. And if there's a way you can help support him in a year where he was banking on doing physical conventions like Gen Con, like Gamehole Con, like, I don't know if he was doing Origins, but definitely GaryCon, and maybe North Texas. Not sure. That might be a little further afield because he's in mid to northern, mid Wisconsin. So, but he does all these great dice. I've mentioned them before on the show here. Anyway, I've been rambling for a long time, and I wanted to take a look at this Halls of Anarchy on Adventure Building Day. So I should probably bring this over here where I can get a good look at it. And then I want to do this thing, right? Halls of Anarchy, blah, blah, blah. Once again, here, I'll go back. The map. So the last one, the first one, we did this last week. Terror and Blasphemy was close to like 60 pages. And it was more like a double adventure. It was very large. And as we dialed it in and remembered the sort of rule of 14 in 3rd edition in regard to adventures, if you had balanced encounters at the expected challenge rating for a given character level, and there were 4 characters of that character level in a good mix, right? So the 4 basic dragon food groups, right? A wizard, a fighter, a cleric, and a rogue. Then you should be able to do an adventure, and if you succeed, 14 encounters should be enough that you will have gained enough experience to level. Essentially, each adventure should gain you a level. It's kind of formulaic, but in a sense, it's what we've always done. We just never did it as precisely as they were trying to do it. But they were also doing it in a way to empower dungeon masters, even as they were empowering players. So as they were codifying things a lot more in a way that made players feel more in control of their characters and their destinies, they were also trying to empower dungeon masters to be able to create their adventures. Because one of the things that was the downfall of TSR and why they had to sell off the D&D property was because they tried to do too much and spread themselves too thin, too many low income, low print run products like adventures, and they were trying to pass this on to a third-party publishing community during 3.0, but at the same time also giving DMs the tools to do that adventure building themselves without needing to buy stuff. So it was a two-pronged approach at removing that from the plate of the publisher of D&D, so they didn't have to create a bunch of low print run, low revenue products and invest a lot of time in that sort of thing. So 14 encounters, and as you can see, 14 right here. I could turn this. I'm not gonna. You can see. In each of these rooms, they'll get split off nicely. Each of these encounter areas, 1, 2, 3, 4 in this hallway. Oh yeah, we were gonna do that thing, weren't we? Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can do that thing with the. What's going on here? Oh, no, that's not what I want. I want this, and I want this. There we go. All right. Big old hand. Now you can see it, right? Luxfire. It was you who taught me this, wasn't it, buddy? I can never get tickets. It always sold out. Oh, for True Dungeon. So here you go. This is sort of a sewer system. This is called Halls of Anarchy. So naturally, like in the last one, the main villain will be Anarchy, and these are his halls. Secret door here. That's the way into this complex, and this. Let's see here. There we go. I gotta get used to this. Once again, 14. Ooh, I hyperlinked all those too. So I've got bookmarks and hyperlinks in this one. This is free, by the way. I'll put a link in the show notes. But these cooperative dungeons, I got all 4 of them in one download, and they're all free. So go grab them. Steal some ideas from them. Traps and tricks and stuff like that. Talks about the Yan world aspect of this. This dungeon is presented as a thieves guild controlled by Lord Anarchy, a sadistic halfling vampire. Lord Anarchy has loftier, more sinister goals than lording over a thieves guild. This is merely a stepping stone for him. It is laid out as a basic guild with sleeping quarters, dining rooms, and training areas. Rooms 1 to 4 consist of the sewer entrances. Rooms 5 through 8 are living and dining quarters. 9 through 11 are administrative meeting areas. And rooms 12 to 14 are the Lost Temple. The guild was once a hidden cult temple, and it still houses several worship areas and the people who maintain them. Interaction between rooms will mainly be the response of guild members hearing sounds of battle. For your evil characters, you have been hired to put... Okay, so in this one, we had hooks, in a sense, for different alignment types and different character types. We've got it for evil, for adventuring groups, as sort of general. Good characters, good clerics, druids, and paladins. Any religious types for most types. Most of it involves a kidnapping of some. For those who have visions. For those that wear their heart on their sleeve. So there's a child taken, a little girl or a little boy, depending on the plot hook. And that's supposed to draw in the adventuring party, give them an excuse to jump in. You got each location. I loved using this dripping blood as a for the margins. Let's see, trapped hallway. This is kind of neat. I think there's gas, and then of course a couple of skulls. Things can get lit up. You've got guards at a intersection. Here's one I created, Petra's Prison. So the idea is that there's a secret door. This is the entrance to the actual Thieves Guild complex. This is turned sideways here. Well, the map was turned sideways, wasn't it? There's a statue here, but there's also the idea that there is a Medusa behind this portcullis. This torch is extinguished here. So there's a way you can squeeze past out of sight of the Medusa without looking at it and enter and exit. So those in the know are going to avoid looking at the Medusa. But if you don't know, well, then you are turned to stone, and the people in charge of the guild can just deal with you as they will. So this is a pretty cool trap. Essentially, it's a monster that is a trap, because the idea is you never really have to fight the Medusa if you can avoid it. And you could even use this for lower level, since it's something you can think your way around. You could use it with lower level characters. I wouldn't go first or second level. You want to have a chance at making the saving throw, right? A petrification if you're doing first edition. So, almost unfair. See now, Lex Fire says Medusa, nice touch. Thinking as a DM. Ink Dweller 8, thinking as a player. says, almost unfair. You can always tell which side people are falling on. Sorry, Ink Dweller. Called you out on that one. Place a few stone rats around. There are actually a couple of statues in the area there, which if you look at them without looking beyond into and the Medusa stays back at first. She doesn't want to be up on the portcullis where she could just take missile fire, right? So she's aware that she could be killed from a distance without being able to do anything about it because of the portcullis. So she stays back in the shadows, in the dark at first. But if you move up to the portcullis because you're not part of the guild and you don't know the danger, then yeah, then you can get caught in the trap. But if you examine the statues, half a dozen of her stone victims share Petra's prison. Some have been given to her by the guild. They were members no longer in good standing. Others are victims she managed to coax down to the bars of her prison, or caught when they ventured too close on their own. Once in reach, they were reduced in strength by her poison and dragged through the bars to be consumed later. Some were unwittingly turned to stone prior to being devoured. She can easily use these stone statues to gain full cover or concealment, 3rd edition mechanics, and avoid ranged attacks from outside the bars, unless she moves right up to the bars. As long as she stays back, she can avoid that sort of thing. So there are signs of what's going on here, and players will likely be able to figure out something's turning things to stone. We shouldn't be in this area. Anyway, that's one of the traps, one of the locations. Here we'll go back to a full view, and we'll just zip through here. Real quick, I want to go to the end, because by going to the end, oops, this, not used to this thing, we can get the OGL information in there, and by doing that, I've covered my legal obligations. I mean, I know this is a product that I published, but so you get the dining halls, you got the sleeping quarters, as we denoted in the opening, chamber of assembly, the preaching hall, the hall of judgment, the temple entrance. There's our buddy, the Brolin Shady Mine, the halfling vampire, known locally as Lord Anarchy. His quarters, beyond a secret door, of course, and another secret door beyond that into his secret treasure room. Good stuff. Also, his prisoner is in there. So that's where you need to eventually go. Anyway, these are free. Grab them on DriveThruRPG under Cooperative Dungeon. There'll be a link in the show notes. Anyway, we pushed it beyond 34 minutes now? Okay. I rambled too much early, right? Happens to me all the time. Anyway, I do want to thank people. If you are in the oops, I should change this back too. Let's go this way. Let's go this way. Back to the good old regular pointer. All right. If you're on Twitch and you're following us, please do chime in during the stream chat, because when you do so, we put you on a list that allows you to be in the weekly giveaway, which is always fun. Pick them up and look good. Good show, Mark. Thanks, man. Rest of the weekend, we've got DM review tomorrow. Not sure what I'm going to look at yet. Still thinking about it. Got rules retrospective on Sunday. I think we need to look at the Barbarian. Or no, sorry, the Ranger, first edition. Subclasses. We did the Paladin last week. We need to do the Ranger. A lot to talk about with the Ranger. Boy, that got beat up 12 different ways. Weekly news and announcements on Monday. Cartography and world building on Tuesday. Campaign discussion on Wednesday. Game running tips on Thursday. Next Friday, I think we'll probably look at Cooperative Dungeon 3 unless it gets preempted by some other cool idea. And also, don't forget, let's go the other way. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Maybe give us a little bit of feedback, comment, whatever. Always happy to get constructive criticism. And I want to thank everybody who checks out the show. Have a great day, and we will catch you sometime soon, maybe tomorrow at 9:30. We're here every day. Thanks. Bye-bye.